Everyone to a special meeting of Brant County Council for Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Howes isn't here. He hasn't said regret, so he might just be, oh, no, he might just be a little bit late, so we haven't, he usually sends regrets if he's not coming. So attendance has been taken. You have an agenda in front of you. It's a special meeting. I just need someone to move the agenda as it stands. Please, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Coleman. Any other questions to what we're going to be doing here this morning? All those in favor of the agenda? Opposed? Carried. We have one delegation. I believe she's online. Andrea, are you online there?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Okay, we'll just wait for a second because I think that A on the has to be her. Says so at the bottom. Okay. There we go. Andrea,
Hello. Good morning.
we can't hear you. There you go. There you are. There. Oh, we still can't hear you. We can see you though.
There is no. This keeps muting.
No, still can't hear anything. We can hear you a little bit. Maybe if you could just turn it up, can you, whatever you're dealing with there. No?
I'm at maximum.
You're at maximum? Okay. But maybe what we'll do is we'll make your presentation larger and so we can read it and then we can catch what we can catch from you. Is that?
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. They're trying to get you to some sort of a way to get louder.
I took off the video so that I can speak directly into the microphone.
Actually, we can hear you a little bit better now, whatever you just did.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so we can hear you much better now, so we'll start. So Andrew, you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and we have your address, we have your name, we know who you are, so whenever you're ready to start, that's great.
Okay. Good morning, Council. I am here once again regarding the proposed pedestrian-only conversion of the Cleaver Road Bridge. This is now my 6th time raising the same concerns. Several delegations in the community have repeated these concerns as well as letters of communication that also form the public record. The data has repeated itself, the policies have repeated themselves. Yet, although this evidence has been shared repeatedly, it has not yet been reflected in the outcome of Council's votes. So today, I am making one clear procedural request prior to the new 2026 budget coming into effect. I am requesting a councillor to come forward with a new motion in order to amend the December 18th, 2025 motion. Should the engineering report determine that the existing Cleaver Road Bridge cannot be converted to a pedestrian use, the project be returned to council for further determination of its potential use as a new pedestrian bridge or a new vehicle bridge using Class C estimates. This is basic due diligence and would follow purchasing bylaw 87-22. This new motion would ensure that council sees the engineering report before making a potential multi-million-dollar decision, that council receives Class C, not Class D, conceptual estimates, that council receives an apples-to-apples comparison, that council, not staff recommendations, make the final determination. This is the minimum standard for responsible governance. Policy-based rationale. Council has adopted policies that are supposed to guide decisions. The Transportation Master Plan, the Official Plan, the public consultation policy, and the asset management plan. A pedestrian-only bridge contradicts every one of them. A vehicle bridge aligns with all of them. Council should not selectively apply policy when it is convenient and ignore it when it is not. The Transportation Master Plan, the TMP, requires a multimodal system that supports goods movement, auto travel, workforce access, and industrial growth. A pedestrian-only bridge eliminates vehicle travel, goods movement, rural connectivity, workforce access, emergency routing flexibility. It serves one mode only. The TMP requires all modes. A pedestrian-only bridge contradicts the TMP. A vehicle bridge fulfills it. The official plan. The official plan directs infrastructure to support employment and industrial lands like the Bethel Road and Rest Acres new businesses. A pedestrian-only bridge does not support workforce access, goods movement, servicing, long-term industrial development. A vehicle bridge does. Council should not claim to support economic development while removing infrastructure required to reach it. Public consultation policy. The area of Highland Estates has 160 municipal addresses, approximately 140 residential addresses, including Cleaver Road on the county map. Petitions in Brant County's own Cleaver Road Bridge survey both showed majority support for vehicle access. At the December 18th meeting, the mayor referenced emails from the quiet people, but no numbers were given, no mythology, no public record have been provided. Without data, those claims should not be considered evidence, and mathematically, it is impossible to have two documented majorities. Only 19 people selected the pedestrian-only option in County of Brant's survey. With those county numbers, there should not be a mandate for a pedestrian-only bridge. Unsupported environmental and recreation claims. County staff stated that ecological conditions of Whiteman's Creek improved and recreation increased since the bridge closure. If these claims are being used to justify a permanent infrastructure change, then the public should see the ecological report, the baseline data of the creek condition, the methodology. Was there a monitoring program? Was there a recreation study? None have been provided to date. Council should not make permanent decisions based on unverified statements. Asset management plan. A pedestrian-only bridge is a change in a service level. The county should demonstrate the rationale and the service level impacts. No such analysis has been presented to date. No traffic study of Cleaver Road before or after the closure has been provided. Mill Street, yes. The surrounding roads, yes. Cleaver Road, no. Rural connectivity. Removing a north-south road connection creates a service inequity for rural residents. This contradicts the county's own planning principles and undermines rural mobility. Emergency services. Even if emergency services say they are not concerned and can manage the 6-minute longer detour, which was confirmed by staff, the delay still exists. By saying that, our concerns do not magically disappear. And emergency routing is only one factor. The TMP requires consideration of connectivity, goods movement, rural mobility, and industrial access. A pedestrian-only bridge does not meet these requirements. Financial stewardship. A pedestrian-only bridge still requires capital investment, inspections, maintenance, and life cycle replacement. With only 19 supporters, council should justify the cost per user, the cost per benefit, the opportunity cost. I don't believe this is fiscally responsible. Governance and precedent. Approving a pedestrian-only conversion without full evidence sets a precedent that infrastructure can be downgraded without all studies. Majority of the key
Andrea? Andrea, we've lost you.
Okay,
You're back.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Governance and precedent. Approving a pedestrian-only conversion without full evidence sets a precedent that infrastructure can be downgraded without studies. Majority of community preference can be ignored. Anecdotal claims can replace documented consultation. This erodes public trust. Engineering and the need to return to council. Every budgetary cost presented so far has been documented as a Class D estimate, as per the December 12th County of Grant briefing notes. No final engineering of the Cleaver Bridge condition has been reported to date. So if a pedestrian conversion is not feasible, the project becomes a new build scenario. At that point, council should compare, as per purchasing bylaw 87-22, a new pedestrian bridge versus a new vehicle bridge. Both engineered, both costed at the same level, both evaluated fairly. This is when council should make the final decision, not before. In closing, a pedestrian-only bridge does not align with the Transportation Master Plan, the official plan, the Asset Management Plan, the public consultation policy. A vehicle bridge does. This evidence has been brought forward multiple times, and so far only some members of council have voted in alignment with it. I am asking council once again to come forward with a new motion in order to amend the December 18th motion. Once again, should the engineering report determine that the existing road bridge cannot be converted to pedestrian use, the project be returned to council for further determination of its potential use, either as a new pedestrian bridge or a new vehicle bridge using Class C estimates. At this time, I welcome any questions from council for the purpose of clarifying the facts and data contained in my delegation. I will not tolerate nor respond to personal remarks or characterizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We do have a question. Councillor Oakley is first, and then Councillor Pierce.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, question to staff just on a few things here. First of all, in regards to the request that the delegation is making, that if the approved option, the pedestrian conversion can't happen, that would come back to council. My understanding is if an approved option couldn't be completed, that would come back to council anyways without any further intervention. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councillor Oakley, that's correct. I mean, essentially, the motion that the delegate has put forward isn't contrary to what was already approved. That is the process that we would follow in any case.
Okay, thank you. And one further clarification to staff. If we were to make some sort of amendment to the already passed motion, that would require a reconsideration vote. Is that correct or no?
Through your worship to Councillor Oakley's question, so it wouldn't be a reconsideration because the wording is entirely different, so it will just be a new motion.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, through you to Andrea. First, I want to commend you on your diligence on this. As you stated, this is your 6th time here, and you asked us to clarify any of the facts in your presentation. I would like to clarify the point that you made. You made the statement that it should be council, not staff recommendations, that make the final decisions. It's always council that makes the final decision. So I want to just make sure that that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Chambers.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I didn't hear whether a motion to reconsider would be in order or not. Could you repeat that?
Through your worship to Councillor Chambers, a reconsideration is not required because the wording is different.
Councillor Miller.
A question to staff. When would we see that engineering report on Cleaver Bridge on whether it can be converted to pedestrian use or it'd have to be rebuilt to be used for pedestrian use?
Go on, yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Miller. Currently, we're just waiting on the full decision and the approval of the budget because we kind of had an idea that this could happen or that it would come back again. So once we get through this and it's approved and we move down and we have authorization to move down the process, then we'll engage the consultant to move forward with the design and a review of the structure to get to that point. So likely in the spring, we would see something.
Okay, so at this point in time, we don't know what the cost would be. And before that even happens, we would see something come back before us. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Alice?
Thank you. Through your worship to council, just to clarify a point, none of the options that are, whatever it is on the Cleaver Road Bridge would not be included in the 2026 budget. So it doesn't directly affect what we're deciding on today. It would affect obviously future budgets and what's in our long-term financial plan, but it does not affect the 2026 budget regardless of which route we went.
Councillor Chambers?
Just to clarify that, am I to understand that the resolution that was passed on December 18th has no bearing on the 2026 budget?
Allison?
Through your worship to Councillor Chambers, that's correct.
So if the December 18th resolution had not passed, it would make no difference.
Allison?
Through your worship, that's correct. It would make a difference, excuse me, not to the budget itself, but to how staff proceed.
Then if the December 18th resolution was reconsidered and defeated, then it would make no difference moving forward.
The December 18th resolution didn't impact this year's budget because there's money to do what's proposed this year already in past year's budgets. But if we reconsidered that and we chose another path, some of the other options did have cost implications for 2026.
Councillor Chambers?
Okay, and then just to follow up then, if I understand that a motion to reconsideration is not required, then council can move in a different direction with regard to the Cleaver Bridge at any point beyond today, recognizing that it may have, it may be changed in the future.
If I may, so when she said that reconsideration isn't required, it's for what specifically Andrea's asked in her presentation, which is that we put a motion forward that if the engineering shows a pedestrian bridge can't move forward, that we would bring it back to council. That resolution itself does not require reconsideration because it's additional to the 18th decision. It's not contrary to the 18th decision. If we want to change the 18th decision and go in another direction before that engineering happens, then yes, that would require a reconsideration. But just to do what Andrea's asked in her presentation does not require reconsideration because it's just bringing it back after we do the work we said we were going to do.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if you just bear with me, I think it's important as we move forward. The December 18th resolution, as you know, and members of council know, and everybody knows, I was ill and could not attend, and I was not able to vote on that resolution. There's a provision in the procedural bylaw that says, well, basically, a basic democratic principle is that if a motion is tied, it is defeated because in order for an action to proceed, it has to have the majority of council approve it. That's why a 50-50 plus one is required. So if the resolution is tied, the resolution is defeated, and we all know that, and we know that. But what we don't know is that, perhaps we should know is that pursuant to the procedural bylaw, in order for a motion to proceed, it has to have the majority. And in this case, it's a rare case where a motion was passed without the majority of council approving it. The vote was 5-4. It passed, but 5-4 is not a majority of council. And that's where rule number 34 comes in, which allows a member to ask for the vote to be renewed or re-voted on if the vote was not passed with a majority of members of council in office. I can ask that to be done by virtue of the procedural bylaw for that vote to be re-voted on. Section 34 of the procedural bylaw. And I'm prepared to do that, and I'm not asking anybody to change their vote, but if everybody votes the same way, then that resolution would be defeated. My dilemma is, if the vote is taken today, the same result would happen, and I would be then allowed to ask for it to be revoted at a subsequent meeting again. So I don't want to do that today unless Councillor Howes is here, because we'll be just doing the same thing next meeting. So that being the case, I guess if it clarifies things, then when we have a council where everyone is present, then I will ask that that vote be renewed.
Heather?
Through the mayor, I need a few minutes I want to check on what the vote actually was on the 18th and review section 34. So if I can have a minute, or if we want to have this discussion later in the meeting.
And Mr. Mayor, I was waiting for the minutes of that meeting to be before us before I asked for the renewal, and I'm prepared to do that. And that's why I asked all those questions at the start of the meeting, whether that resolution impacts the budget discussions. I've been told that it doesn't, but any future action may be affected. So I will hold on to that because I do have the right to ask for that motion to be renewed on the basis that it was passed without the majority of members of council voting for it. And just to elaborate on that, in the olden days, in 5-member councils, the Municipal Act was actually quite clear at that point. If a vote happened where 2 members of council were absent and the vote was 2-1, that would be deemed to be defeated, even though it was 2-1-4, because a majority of members of council were not in favor of that. And that prompted rule number 34 to be placed in the procedural bylaw. And I know a little bit about rule number 34 because I was the one that wrote it, and it is in this procedural bylaw. So I will patiently wait till we have a full council and then ask that that resolution be re-voted on, and that would open up the discussion for the Cleaver Road Bridge once more.
Did you still need more time?
Well, I can confirm what section 35 says of the procedural bylaw. Just 1 minute, let me open it up here.
If it's rule number 35, I apologize. We must have added one in between.
Yeah, we've. So rule number 35, which is the rule we're speaking of, says any member may at the same or any subsequent meeting of council move for the renewal of a motion that has been defeated by less than a majority of the members of council then in office. For a renewal to be passed, it must have the support of a majority of the members then in office. So this motion was not defeated by less than a majority, so the resolution would stand. It would require reconsideration at this point if we were going to change direction from the 18th.
And not to be argumentative, but when that rule was placed in the procedural bylaw, it was logically in the corollary that the term defeated could be applied, whether it was approved or defeated. The key point being that a majority of council must approve an action. 5 is not a majority of council, so that the rule applies. And that's the intent of the resolution. And the person that wrote the resolution should know the intent, and the explanation is before you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, the language has been explained to us clearly, and frankly, the intent doesn't matter, the language matters. The motion was not defeated. We had a quorum of council, we've made a decision. Want it reconsidered, we can ask for it to be reconsidered, but otherwise.
And again, the corollary is that whether it's defeated or approved makes no difference logically, and in this case, the rule applies.
Any other comments? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a moot point anyway. I think our staff, if they go through the exercise of determining whether a pedestrian bridge is suitable or not, if it's not suitable, it will come back to council. It actually is like the Salt Springs Road story. We in council approved the design, but if the design comes back and it's far too expensive, then council will reconsider it. So I don't think anything is lost by doing nothing.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So just for clarification on that second part, because I'm reading it here as well, it says, for such a renewal motion to be passed, it must have the support of the majority of members then in office. A renewed motion may be in the form of original defeated motion or a similar thereto. So that being said, would the renewal not need majority before we even renew it? I'm confused.
And again,
So much like a reconsideration, we would be putting a renewal motion on the table before we debate the topic, and we would vote on the renewal.
Okay, thank you.
Chambers?
actually, the precedent says that the language, although I admit it's not elegant, and I should have been a little bit more careful in the wording, but the renewal, as opposed to being, if that had said reconsideration, then it would be different. The reason the word renewal was used, and this was all vetted by the legal back when it was originally, and I can explain why it was put in place originally, but that basically says that the motion that was before us can be revoted on. So rather than say it can be revoted on, the term renewal was used. And again, the wording is not elegant, but that was the intent, and that was how it was done before when this resolution, which is rarely used, was used previously. And the same thing happened back in the day, that some members of council were absent and a motion was passed that did not have the full majority of council in favor of that. And the reason it was placed in the procedural bylaw was that to avoid reconsideration, because reconsideration takes 2/3, and if one member isn't here, you still have a case where the action taken by council has to be ratified by the majority of council.
Anything new, Heather, there?
No, I do recall when we had this piece was put into the procedural bylaw. And I know the circumstances around that were related specifically to members bringing something forward when a certain member wasn't in attendance, so that it would get defeated without that person having their chance to bring it forward themselves. So I know it was specifically done on the defeated basis. It would be council, if council wishes to interpret it as a corollary, that approval would also fall under this. Really, there should be a change to the procedural bylaw to be clear on that before we start using that corollary.
Any other comments from council? The only thing I'm not clear of, Robert, in 7.5 years that I've never heard this. We've voted without people being here before, and it was either defeated or passed. And why are we talking about it now after 7.5 years? Why haven't you brought this up sooner? Because there's been lots of tie votes that you've been present at, and some that you haven't been present at. So this would have affected you and all of us, not me really, because I'm usually here, but people that haven't been here. I mean, why haven't you brought this up before, saying, you know, we had 2 people away, and we have to re-vote, or we can't at least acknowledge the fact that it failed? Why now, Robert?
I can answer that question very, very bluntly. I was not present at the meeting where this was voted on, and had I been present at the meeting where it was voted on, the resolution that passed would not have passed. And I think if members of council respect that this motion would not have passed if I was present, then showing respect to my vote, being the ward councillor in which the issue was present, it would only be respectful and democratic to allow my vote to matter. So in this case, my vote does matter. And in every vote, my vote should matter. And again, it's not often used, but in cases like this where course of events happens, where if all members of council were present at the time, it wouldn't be carrying forward. That's why I'm bringing it forward now, because again, if members of council want to disrespect my vote by not allowing me to vote on the issue, then I take great offense to that. And I know if we went through a reconsideration of that vote, I'm not asking anybody to change their vote. I'm just asking people to allow me to vote. So if members of council use procedure to prevent my vote from mattering, I would take offense to that. And I think the people that I represent would take offense to that. And I have the right to vote on any matter that comes before council, and my vote should matter. So if we did do a reconsideration and people voted against reconsideration, then you're looking me in the face and saying, Councillor Chambers, your vote does not matter.
Okay, Councillor
And
Chambers.
I don't want to see that happen.
I don't believe that that's anywhere where we were. I don't think we were anywhere near that. I'm saying that in the last 7.5 years that I've been the mayor, people have been absent and we voted and it failed or it passed or whatever. Having one council short made it a little bit easier, but with one short, it makes it, we've been tied much more often. But no one's ever saying that we don't respect your vote. But I think that you give up some of your power as a mayor or as a councillor when you're not here. I mean, there's lots of avenues. Andrea's here right now in a different version. She's not right in the room. You can zoom in. But I've never heard of such a thing. And maybe it's the policy or the way it's worded that needs to be looked at, not your vote. Because no one's ever saying that your vote's not important, and we don't mean to disrespect anybody's vote. I'm just thinking that this is something that we're hearing about right now, which we've never heard about for 7.5 years. And I just think, you wrote it, you said, and if it's not clear, you wrote it, and someone already says, oh, there's an intent, but I didn't write it down, well, then it wasn't done, without a loophole. Like, why hasn't everyone on council said, I wasn't there last Tuesday night, and I didn't get to vote, and if you don't let me vote now, it means that my vote means nothing, you're disrespecting me. We would get nothing done, because most of the time, especially coming into the winter season, we're gonna be having people not be here. Then what do we do? I don't understand it, Councillor Chambers, and I certainly don't mean to disrespect you or your vote, but I just don't get why we haven't done this all along and why it's coming to the forefront today.
I don't want to be argumentative and I don't want to respond, but.
You have to respond, I've asked you.
But the rule has been in the procedural bylaw as long as you've been mayor. It's been in the procedural bylaw for over 30 years. And the fact that it does not get used regularly does not make it any less important or any less of a rule. And again, I'm not asking for that. I recognize that the business of the council can proceed without that happening. But I am saying that according to the Municipal Act and according to our procedural bylaw, for an action to happen, it must have the majority of council in favor of it. And in this case, the majority of council is not in favor of it, and that's not democratic. Now, I'm not going to apologize for not being able to come to the meeting. Sometimes when you're ill, you cannot attend a meeting. And sometimes when you're ill, things happen that you may wish to vote and you weren't here. And that's why Article 35, I guess it's called now, is in place for that very reason. Doesn't happen often. We're in a little bit of a different situation here because we only have 10 members of council, and the propensity for tie votes is higher. Anybody should have the right to follow the procedural bylaw, and anybody should have the right, if they want to vote on an issue that was not passed by the majority of members of council, should be allowed to vote on that. Right. And that's just a matter of respect. And again, I don't want to pursue the matter. I'm not asking for it today. I may ask for it when we have a full council. Recognizing that we don't need a reconsideration, I can just ask for it to be renewed. Doesn't matter today, but as we move forward with the Cleaver Bridge situation, there may be information that comes forward in what we're doing, so that may be the time to do that. So just to summarize, the option that was chosen by less than the majority of council may be revisited. It may come into effect in 2027, as I'm told that nothing's really happening except the preliminary stuff in our budget, and that's what we're here to talk about, what's in the budget, not what's going to happen in the future with the Cleaver Bridge.
Okay, I'm glad that I hadn't heard about this at all until today, because I can only tell you how I see it and how I see it. And saying that it's been around 30 years clarifies something in my mind. It seems like if you had an agenda, your own agenda, and two of your buddies weren't here to vote, and you were going to lose it, that's why something like this would be valuable. But that's not the way we do it. If you're here, you're here. If you vote, and you vote. If two of your buddies can't come to support you and you fail, then maybe that's why, I don't know why it was put in place.
Someday, Mr. Mayor, you may be ill and not be able to attend a meeting, and a vote happens where you feel strongly about the issue and wish to vote, to cast your vote, and then you may feel different. You may feel then how I feel now on not being allowed to vote on an issue that is very important to the people I represent in Ward 4.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there because I just don't understand it as clearly as I would like to. Have my own ideas, but I shouldn't make them public right now. Councillor Oakley?
Yeah, through the mayor, just to clarify that the Rule 35 as written clarifies that the motion must be defeated. The motion was passed, so the renewal motion is not relevant in this meeting or a future one. Thank you.
So with that being completely contrary to what we've just been talking about, we better leave it alone, and we'll talk about it when we have full council, and we could revisit it and see if it fits. What do you want to do, Councillor Chambers?
I just want to make a comment. I appreciate Councillor Oakley's advice and interpretation of the intent of a motion that I wrote.
Councillor Oakley?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, let's not go back and forth on this. I think we know where we are. It's made perfectly clear that the decision we make today has no bearing on the 2026 budget. We have a presentation that was just done. I'll move to receive the presentation and go from there.
I need a seconder. I think, did you want to speak, Councillor Bell? No? So it's on the floor to receive his information. And Councillor, who's going to be the seconder? Councillor Coleman's going to second it. All those in favor to receive? Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for your presentation. Okay. We have nothing else except the presentation and the beginning of the presentation of budget. So in front of you, you have a binder, and today you should have been given one of these, which is a summary of everything that's in your binder. Is anyone offended that I'm not going to stand at the podium? I'm going to sit here. If you want me at the podium, say you want me at the podium. I don't want to read about it in tomorrow's newspaper that the mayor refused to get out of his seat to stand at the podium. So we're okay sitting here? That's perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the presentation, as you see it, is what it is. I had to, by the direction of the Premier of Ontario, present a budget to the county for 2026. And that's what I've done. And if you look at the first page, the mayor's message, you'll see that it rounds off to 5%. 1% being the $1 million for the hospital. So if you, for whatever reason, you don't think that's a good idea, you can tell me that, and it would go to 4%. And then after it becomes 4%, if that's what you want, because I want it to stay exactly the way it is. And then we started taking things away. First of all, I'd like to thank staff. The three Heathers and I met, and I don't think anyone thinks that I was chained in my basement doing this by myself. Anyone who knows me and knows the process knows that didn't happen. So it was certainly staff generated, and the mayor sealed the deal. So once it becomes 4%, if you want to not do the hospital $1 million, that's better. But this is a complete budget the way it sits. Other budgets around us have not included things like the contribution to the hospital, so they've been able to play with low numbers and make it look a little bit better than ours, but they certainly aren't better than ours because we've included everything. Once it was at 4, we started to take things away, or what about this, or what about that, and we got it down to this and got it down to that. But at the end of the day, I don't think that anyone really sees a difference, other than the public likes to see 3.9 instead of 4. It's like buying bananas for $2.99 a pound instead of 3. It is just an illusion of a better number, but it's not a better number because it doesn't change anything. So what we've done, or what I've done, is we've opened up the long-term financial plan. That way I could do the budget and present the budget as my own, but I used all the information that was done by my council, which supports my speaking clearly and loudly that I have no interest in being a strong mayor and using my strong mayor's power. So this was the only way that I could get complete buy-in from my council and still tweak it and turn it and move it and have it taken out and put back in. So this is my budget to council, but it is your input that drove me to putting it down. So I know that everything in this budget is okayed by my council because it was okayed unanimously. So I felt better. It's very much like being in COVID, where Michael Bradley and I didn't need council for almost a year and a half. Michael and I made decisions, and I said to Michael at one point, I said, you know, I miss talking to my council. Sometimes we wish we didn't talk so much, but I missed it when it was gone. So this was the only way that I could figure out that I could do a mayor's budget with my council's input that I know no one can really say too much about because they have already voted on it unanimously and thought it was a good idea. So that's my spiel as to how I got here. I have one more concern, one more. If today is going to be, this is going to be given to you to take back. You can make alterations to it if you like. You can do all kinds of things if you like. But the thing is, if it's too much different than what I've done, then I've got another problem, because then if I decide to veto it and put it back the way it is, that would be my first time that I would have to use my strong mayor's powers, which I publicly have said I don't want to ever use. And that's a problem, because it would have to be a veto. So I'm hoping that when you see the presentation, which is going to be coming up, oh, there it is, that you'll understand how I got here and how I got here with your approval already, and still could make it my own. So we'll go through it. You see it, it's at 5%. So we're not going to talk about going back to 4% because that would be taking away the $1 million for the hospital. And I don't think there was anyone in the room that thought that was a good idea. So we'll stay at 5 and we'll start talking about it. Everything that you did and everything that you okayed in the long-term financial plan is listed. We can go to the next slide, please. Who's got the slide projection? Okay, so this just says where the money goes, what we've done. I think 5% is an amazing number considering all the things we've done. We haven't done little things like do paint jobs and patching up anything. We've built buildings, we've built OPP stations, and we're working on a paramedics building and just all kinds of things, upgrades. We've done all kinds of infrastructure. This picture just speaks to machinery in our roads department, and we got 2,200 kilometers of roads to keep, and we've done a great job so far. We've had nothing but praise from the public so far this winter, and it's been a tough winter. You can go to the next slide. This is going to be just a quick, again, what we've done. We've done the OPP detachment. We've gone through and brought all of our fire stations up to code. As I said, we've been working on the paramedic services headquarters, which was a big investment. Equipment, even yesterday at the paramedics meeting, we talked about putting things, Councillor Miller was there, and we've got things that he learned at the Roma that we're going to bring for consideration again for more upgrades. So we've been staying on top of the things that we spent most of our money on. These are not little things, these are huge expenses that other municipalities talk about and work on for 15 years, and we've done it since I've been the mayor, for 7.5 years. This council and the last council, we got a lot done. And we did it on our own. The OPP station is not a split own between the police and us. It's our building. And we were offered a partnership with the OPP, and we decided that we wanted to own the OPP station. For the future, we don't know what the future looks like, whether someday we would go back to our own police department. It would be our building. We wouldn't have to negotiate with OPP. I'm just saying it could happen. I'm not saying that we've ever talked about it, but there was enough discussion amongst ourselves that we thought if we can afford it, let's just own it. And then someday, if we have to deal with the province, it'll be easier. So we did that. You can go to the next slide. I think everyone knows what we did for the emergency services. Brant County's always done a wonderful job in recreation. We keep our recreational halls all current. We always go after the public sector, the Lions clubs, the Optimist clubs, all the people that support the county like they do, but we've always done our part to do recreational programs, daycare programs, summer camps, drop-in centers, and activities. We have state-of-the-art playgrounds, water parks, and we've done a lot, all very aware that we don't just do them in one area, we do them everywhere. As you're going to see later on, probably this year, when we don't put one veterans crosswalk in Burford, we put one in Burford, we put one in St. George, we put one in Paris. We have to think in 3s and 4s because they're all taxpayers and we can't just keep patting the ones that ask us the most often. So our playgrounds are something we've always done a great job on, and we've done some amazing ones in the last little while. Next slide. This is something that we've done very well again. We put money into St. George in the corner in the parking lot. We also have a program where we will match store owners and people that want to improve their properties. They give us what they want. We put it through a process of vetting, and if it's the right thing to do, we pay for half. That's not something we just do for Paris. It's something that we started out doing in Paris, and we extended it to St. George and to Burford. People are loving it. They're something that they might not have been able to afford, awnings, new windows, accessibility pieces to their washrooms, things like that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do as quickly as they wanted to do it. Bring it to us, show us what it costs. We put it through a process. If it's good, we stamp it, and we're helping all 3 of the major communities right now, and we've done a great job. There's a committee that does a great job with it, and when trees die, we replace them. We don't let anything be unkept. There was 2 trees that died in the St. George Cemetery. I made a phone call saying there was. I went by again, I saw 2 holes open. Next time I went by, I saw 2 brand new trees. So we do keep up on what we're supposed to be keeping up on. Nothing looks abandoned, and nothing looks shabby. We keep things up, we put the money into it when we invest in it, and then we have a certain contingency that keeps them looking as good as the day they were put in. Next slide, please. We're very lucky to have people wanting to come to the County of Brant. I sit on the Ontario Wardens Caucus. They haven't seen growth, some of them in 5, 6, 10 years, and I start telling them about what we've done and what's coming. I mean, we're fighting for another entrance to an industrial park that is almost sold out already. I mean, people are wanting to come to the County of Brant, and that's just not because we don't, I mean, when I thought people referred to us as the County of Can't, is what I heard a lot of times before. I sort of know that that's just not true. We are the County of Brant, and we have people lined up to do business with us in a big way, not little things, big things, because we've proven ourselves as people who take everything seriously. We do the best we can. We help. We have 400% increase for commission, and we have 2.6, I think, billion dollars worth of taxable a tax base that's just waiting for us to get a driveway for them to get into the industrial park with a new exit off of Bishopsgate Road. So as soon as that, and we talk about that to the minister every chance we get, but it's not where we are now even, it's what's coming directly ahead of us. We're in great shape. As I said, lots of people want to play with us because they've played with other people and they haven't been given satisfaction. We also have a lot of people moving to the County of Brant that have been established somewhere else, and we are great to deal with. Our staff is right on the button, and I get more phone calls from people that don't need to tell me anything about how wonderful our staff are. In fact, I just came from a convention. I passed on compliments to one of our general managers and our clerks from their prior employers, saying how lucky we are to have good people. And we should, and they've heard back from them saying that they're enjoying the fact that they're working in the County of Brant. So and that's from the employee that they left to come here. So they're still talking nicely about our staff after they jumped ship and came to Brant. So that's a wonderful thing. Next slide. This is the way it broke down before. This is the way it still stands. The operating budget, the capital budget, bringing everything back to 5. It's obviously the most condensed version of the entire binder that you're receiving. But like we say sometimes when we get staff reports and then someone comes up to the podium and speaks to it, we say, well, we don't need to go through the whole thing. We've had it in front of us. We've looked it over. There will be another chance for you people. There's going to be another meeting where anything you're concerned with or anything you might want to see tweaked, you can do a lot of tweaking before you move one point. And that's what I learned during this process. Well, what if we just tried this? Or what if we didn't do this year? We bumped this to next year, bumped it forward, bumped it back. You have to do an awful lot of bumping to get one percentage point. So if it's not something that you're so offended by that you have to bring it back for, because it's a big deal once this gets changed. Mostly for me, because as I said, I have to find a way to deal with that. And I don't want to look contradictory to the fact that I am so solely offended by the fact that strong marriage powers even exist. So with that being said, that's all I have to say. It's quite clear what I've done. I'm not trying to paint any kind of a picture other than the reality of how we did it. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. If, a couple of questions, if I could.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say, thank you to you for sticking to your word with the strong mayor powers and such, and allowing us as council to, in essence, work through our long-term financial plan to allow you to bring this to us. So thank you for that. I don't have any problems with it the way it's written. I don't, it's, would we like to have it lower than 5? Sure we would, but I don't have any problem with 5. I do not want to take the 1% out for the hospital. We need to do at least that. The only problem I have, and I've had this problem for quite some time with our budgets, and it's on the page that's on the screen right now, when it talks about tax increases on residential property and assessed at $391,000. Now, I don't know what antiquated numbers we're still using from MPAC, but to me, that does not paint an appropriate picture for the public. They're going to look at that and they're going to say, oh, well, how come mine went up, $500 when you said it was only $206? Little bit of research I did, and these are 2024, 2025 numbers I found online for the County of Brant, and it states anywhere from $700 to $1 million is the median price for a residential home. And it also states in there 2025, it's about, for a 50-acre plot, it's over $1 million. So I'm wondering if it's possible that even if those numbers, the 2024, 2025 numbers that I found online are not exact, it would paint a clearer picture for the public to say, hypothetically, if that number was, $500 or $400, because I hopefully the public reads it all and they pick up on that 391, may have a little chuckle to themselves, because there's nothing. You can get an empty plot of land for $391,000 to build a house. But again, and I know it's not us and I know it's not staff, because they're just going from the numbers that the most recent numbers, which are probably 10 years old from MPAC. I'm curious if we could just put some sort of asterisk or something that would show, these are not 2025 increases.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair, and I think that could happen. In fact, I think that should happen. And we can pick any number we like to do the calculation, because it doesn't mean anything. We're not talking to any one person. So we can pick a $750,000 home and just break it down and do the math and put what it would cost that person.
Yeah, because as I say, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that the picture is clear for all the public, because all we need is somebody to see that number and go, hey, wait a minute, you told me it was this, but it's this. Because they, to no fault of anybody's, when it comes to financing, most people just read the bottom number, how much it's going to cost me. They don't understand how it gets there, right?
That's perfect. We'll do that. Councillor, sorry. Heather.
Just to that point, there is a slide later. It is a question that's already come through Engage Brant, but just to be clear, 391 is what the median home is assessed at in Brant right now. The assessment is from 2016 values, but your $750,000 home right now is assessed on your assessment papers at 391, which is how we calculate what the taxes are. So it's based on your assessed number, not your value, not what the price is, not what the price was last year when you bought it. It's based on what MPAC has declared the assessment to be. And even when they assess new homes right now, they're assessing them based on 2016 dollars, which is difficult to explain because I know people know the value of their home. But if they go back and look at the assessment papers they get from MPAC, this median home isn't just made up, it is a number from MPAC.
We could put something though beside it, couldn't we, that just says, as an example, if your home was worth $750,000, the tax would be this much. Can we not do something, do the facts and then do an example so that people could relate more to it?
Well, I think all we could really do is if we could go back and look at some of the sales and say the median 391 is currently selling for approximately 800,000, or we could maybe try to find some number like that. We can't say, because if your house is assessed at 750, yeah, you're paying more than double this tax rate. But most 750 houses are not going to be assessed at that value right now.
Okay. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, and like I say, Mr. Mayor, I think anything like that would be beneficial, because I mean, if we look at even like, you know, up on the southwest, like all those detached homes, like they're selling for over $1 million. So I'm assuming that their assessment is gonna be more than 391,000, but I don't know. But I'm just, like I say, I wanna just make sure we've got the clear picture out there, that's all.
That's good.
Anything would be great.
We'll figure something out.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Just anecdotally on that topic, just for context, you know, I believe my house is probably in around like $500,000 right now. I paid $404 and my assessed value is about $202. So just for context of where that is and the absurdity of our housing prices these days. So I just wanted to say, because we just got back from Roma, you know, I was talking to a lot of people from other municipalities who are dealing with the reality of strong mayors, since most folks have strong mayors now. And a lot of them have been feeling, you know, less engaged, less involved in the budget process. And again, I've said it multiple times, but I want to take the time as well to just praise you, Mayor Bailey, staff, for creating a process that keeps us as involved as possible. You know, because I know there will be some people who go and read this mayor's budget and, you know, if they like it or don't like it, put it all on you. But this is a group decision, and I feel very strongly that, you know, if someone's taking fall for it, it's all of us, not just the mayor here, because I think this is very reflective of what we all voted on. And I just, again, wanted to give kudos to you, Mr. Mayor, in choosing to do so where you otherwise didn't have to. And then I have one question for staff, just in regards to here in conversations that we had back at the long-term financial plan, and I believe a meeting before that. Do we know where we sit with the additional outreach workers that we had approved as part of social services, and we weren't sure whether or not they would be in this budget here?
Through the mayor, I do actually have a couple slides on that when we get to the question period, so rather than trying to answer it off the top of my head.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Pierce, I'm very grateful you've taken this course of action. I think it does reflect a much more democratic approach to running our local municipality, and I fully support what you've done. I think we're underselling ourselves a little with this, and I know this is not meant for full outside consumption, but if we just step back and we look at the operating budget papers that we've got in our big document, our expenditures next year are not 71 million. They're actually 162 million. And I think it's about time we try to get people to understand just about how big an operation we have here. This is not a Tupney-Aitney kind of job. This is a very, very large corporation that we're running now. And I think even in my 7 years, we must have grown, I think, almost 100% in that time in terms of the expenditures we've had. And it kind of dilutes the story by starting at 71 million rather than starting at 162. I'd rather you started at 162, demonstrated that some of it is paid for by grants and fees, some of it is paid for by others. But we need also to reflect on the fact that our expenditures are going up at about 8% per year. And that, if you look at the three-year forecast we've got, that's continuing. That's the kind of business we're in. But the real nice story of this is that of that 8%, about 4% is actually going to be paid for by the increase in tax assessment. And I get constantly challenged by residents, why is my tax bill going up when we've got so much growth? Well, the answer is, if we didn't have that growth, your tax will be much higher. But at the same time, if you can isolate what we get from increased tax assessment, come back down to a number that actually reflects two or three things. One of them is inflation, which we're all subject to. Everybody recognizes that. But there are other singular items like the OPP asking for more money, social services asking for more money. When we tell the story, and it's not today's story, but when we tell that story, we need to be a little bit more fulsome in explaining to our community why, even when we're growing, we have to put our tax rates up. And it may not be terribly palatable, but at least people will understand better why we're doing what we're doing. When you get to the three-year forecast, if you just look at the number that we have, the bottom line for the median house of $4,000 a year, by the time you get to 2029, the number we've got there is nearly 5,000. It's a 25% increase. And I think we need to also tell our community, we understand what's coming. We're going to be working hard to make sure it's not 25%, but hopefully something less. Like last year, we started at 13 and we're down to 5 because of all the good work that staff have done, what councillors done, the good thinking we put in, the fact we've got a model that actually allows us to play the games to understand what happens. So, not for today, Mr. Mayor, but I think you've got a very good story to tell, and I think there's more to tell the public in the future.
Councillor Bell. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and like Councillor Pierce and Councillor Bell, I fully support what you've got here. The only correction I did find is in about the second page is we don't have 2,200 kilometers of roads, we have 2,200 kilometers of lane roads. It's 1,200 kilometers of roads that we have. Not unless we annexed somebody in the last day and I didn't notice it. So, but I appreciate what you've done here, and I will echo what Councillor Bella just said about we don't blow it up enough that what the outside agencies are coming at us that we can't control. And I just had one the other day that reamed me out pretty good. I says, but we have no control over social services, we have no control over the OPP, and a lot of other things. And that's where we need to seem to somehow to get the reins on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Chambers.
Just a comment and then a question. Going back to what Councillor Bell just said with regard to, we're showing a $71 million operating levy. In actual fact, we're spending a lot more, but we get money externally. What the conservation authorities do, they add a column that says the levy represents 35% of the total expenditures. So if that line was in here, 71 million would be a percentage of, 50% is what we're paying for what we get, and that might be instructive as well. The other question I have is for Heather with regard to assessment. I'm just trying to get this through my head. The last reassessment was done in 2016?
Correct.
And so my property was assessed in 2016. A new house in North Paris wasn't even there then. And how was it assessed? Is it assessed on the value today?
No.
How did they work that out? Because
They take the value today and they convert it back to 2016.
so there is a conversion factor
Yes.
back to 2016, which would be inherently fair.
Yeah.
So, something else that makes me feel good about the way we've done this is the fact that when I was at the when I was at Tillsonburg the other day at the Elmhurst, we had dinner, and I was sat next to the mayor of Walkerton, who did his budget already, and it was much different than 5, I'll tell you that. But he did the Strong Mayor's version of it, and up there, a lot of their councillors and their mayor have known each other their whole life. They went to school together. They're very And he said that he was treated badly and jeered, and he hasn't talked to two of his counselors since he presented the budget. He said he didn't think it was, he didn't see it coming because he worked with staff, but, so that component, and I have to thank Councillor Bell for the long-term financial plan. The timing was perfect for me because you kept talking about it when you're not talking about parking spots, Councillor Bell. You're talking about long-term financial plan, and for that, I'm very grateful. The timing of this in front of me to work off as a resource was perfect, but he didn't have that. He just was exercising his strong mayor's powers, and it didn't go well for him at all. And he's a young guy with a family, and he feels differently about being the mayor now. He didn't think he would, but people can turn on you when they think you've done too much of what you wanted and didn't really think about everybody else. So I'm really happy that I did it this way, and I feel like I've acknowledged every one of you because I remember everyone speaking at some part of this and having opinions that brought us to this. So I really do. I am very thankful for you for accepting it as the way I've done it, because I don't know whether I don't know what the minister or Mr. Ford would think of the way I did it, because I'm sure it wasn't his intent the way he wrote it, but we got through it, I hope. So Allison has the next piece of the presentation, and it's not a long piece, but it's the next thing up. So.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. I'm going to be very brief here, but I know it's not something we typically talk about in depth when we go through the budget, but I think it's important context to talk about staffing, and often questions come up related to salaries, wages, benefits. But I think what we don't talk about is the ROI, and Councillor Bell alluded to this, and it's a great lead into what I'm about to say, is the complexity and depth of our organization has changed drastically in recent years. Sometimes because of legislation, sometimes because of growth. There's a variety of reasons. But all of the line items in our budget translate into the work plan for staff. So, the relationship, is in reality and on paper very much tied together. When we talk about some of the challenges that we're going through, and in terms of recruitment, a challenging municipal environment, it's very competitive. Our staff are in I think, a great position to embrace those challenges, and I have full confidence in our staff's ability to take them on. And again, going back to our ROI, I'm going to use maybe a couple of examples. One being a couple of years ago, we, in development services, we're not realizing all of the assessment growth that we should have been in ICI. We ended up at the OLT a number of times for non-decision, and that was in large part because we didn't have full staffing complement in place. And that wasn't about new staffing, that was just existing staffing and retention of the staff that we had. And I'll give kudos to Alicia. Since she's taken over, we now have a full complement of staff. And I think we're seeing the results, and it's not a straight cause and effect. I'll acknowledge there are a lot of factors in that, but we are seeing 400% growth in ICI. We do have those projects moving now. We are seeing, I think we had the first subdivision plan actually come for decision to council that we have in years instead of going to the OLT. That investment in just retaining those staff and making sure that we have a stable complement is having a massive ROI and impact on our budget. I'll also talk about the long-term financial plan a little bit. Again, we added, I believe, one staff member in finance for 2025. That is what enabled that team to be able to produce the long-term financial plan and get it in front, and it's a tool. So again, it's never as simple, nothing is when we go through budget, but to just talk about staffing from purely from the salary perspective, I think doesn't do it justice, because I think we should also be talking about the ROI when we do add additional staff. It's not the case this year. We're not asking for new staff for 2026, but again, the investments that have been made in recent years, I think are paying off in spades. So I want to thank council for that. And I do want to assure you that the staff that we do have, as I mentioned, is highly dedicated. You know, they are invested here. Many have so many years either just living here, also working for the county, or both. And I'm impressed every day with the work they do to achieve the goals that you set for them. I also want to thank the mayor and council, obviously, for your contributions to this budget, your support of staff to help us get here, and the entire budget team for the endless amount of work that you did to assist the mayor in getting here. And I'm very proud of the work that's put before you, and I think this represents an ambitious but a very realistic and feasible budget for the community.
Okay, questions, discussions? Councillor Pierce and then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Allison. So, you know, through you to all of staff, I think we're very blessed in the county to have the staff we do. I just want to confirm here, because if we look at the staff context slide, it states in there that no new staff positions are proposed for 2026. And then the last statement puts ourselves, due to growth and demand, even status quo budgets typically represent increases in staff workload. So to me, those two kind of contradict each other, and I just want to make sure that by not having any net new staff positions, that we're not going to get ourselves back into a position to which you spoke of at the start of your presentation.
Through your worship to council, there's been a lot of discussion about that, and both statements are absolutely true. It being an election year, I think this is going to be a year collectively for us to regroup and catch up. And it's going to be the next council's decision on how ambitious they want to be with growth, with new initiatives. And I think that would be the time for us to assess where we are in terms of capacity and resources. This year, you know, we don't anticipate adding a lot of new initiatives. So I think the focus for staff is really going to be, again, it's going to be busy. There's going to be a lot, but the focus is going to be on catching up and getting us to a much more stable level in terms of our workload, and be prepared for what the next council may want to do in terms of moving forward with the new initiatives.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. Busy's good, but burnout is not. I just want to make sure we're not in that situation across the board. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Allison. I just wanted to ask whether or not it would be possible, maybe not this year, but in a future year, just to look at sort of comparatives between our staffing complement and other municipalities, because as along with what Councilor Pierce is saying, we have an incredible staff, and what's in here, we have incredible staff complement, incredibly dedicated, and I know we have, I believe, Shania can correct me, 4 people in clerks currently, 3?
Through your worship, it's 4, and then we're recruiting for another person.
4. And I believe, you know, and this is not an exercise to name and shame anybody else. That's not the intent of this. I believe the city of Brantford has 22, which even when factoring in the difference in our population, we are incredibly efficient. And I think you could say that about just about every department. And I think, you know, I think in the public zeitgeist, this idea that, you know, government bureaucracy is bloated and slow, and I can't comment on, you know, other levels of government, but I can, and thus, you know, when I'm talking to members of the public, they're like, why can't you just make cuts to staff, so on and so forth. I want to highlight in very strong terms that is not the case in the county. We are incredibly blessed to have incredible staff, incredibly dedicated staff. We're very efficient, and I think that needs to be highlighted in some way just to show, you know, we are very, very efficient, and that's something also not to take for granted, because that's something that's very fragile. And I think we need to acknowledge that as much as possible when talking to the public in the future, because I know one of the things that got highlighted on Councillor Bell's post about the budget was that we have an 8% increase in salaries budget, or salaries, so on and so forth. Pensions, benefits, I believe was the name of the category. It's well worth the tax dollars we're spending on it. So I just wanted to highlight that and ask if in the future we could do some comparisons on that, just so people can appreciate just how efficient and effective we are.
Through your worship to Councillor Oakley, thank you. And Heather will speak to that number a little bit because it's a bit of a red herring, I think, or at least how it's being interpreted. And I have, to your point, looked into doing that sort of comparison before. It's unsurprisingly more complicated than you would think, because even if you're comparing staff departments to, apples to apples, what's included in their workload and their service levels is also potentially different. So, there are nuances to it. It's a little bit more difficult than you would think, but anecdotally, I know that we're pretty lean, just speaking to neighbors and other colleagues. And I think we've operated that way for a long time, so it's not surprising, but I know when new staff come from other places, they definitely notice the difference in volume, municipality to municipality. So again, we know anecdotally that relatively in most places we're relatively lean, but I am looking at ways that we can maybe demonstrate that in an efficient manner. I just want to make sure that it's actually representative of the reality on the ground.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Just to comment on staffing, I just, having just come back from Roma, and you see, rows and rows of vendors, and if we ever have a surge in whatever, and I'll just use an example, say planning, a bunch of comments, there seems to be no end of businesses out there that have staff that can help us, right? And then we use them for a short period of time. So there's always that option. I just want to ask, when can we ask questions specific to the budget? Are we at that stage yet, or?
Well, there's going to be another meeting where you can bring back any suggestions or
Not
comments.
suggestions, just questions of clarification, that's all.
We should have done it before Allison started, but we can do it now.
Okay. I wanted to ask 1.3 of our budget binder, talking about revenues, and there's a big jump, well, I thought a relatively big jump in federal provincial grants of almost $2 million. Is that, do we know, what's the biggest driver of that? Do we know?
Through the mayor, the large increase there actually relates to the CP, all the community paramedicine programs.
Okay.
Some of their budgets previously were not incorporated in the overall picture. So you'll see part of the larger increase in salary and wages and in the federal grant, because those programs are 100% funded. Those are the two lines that it's hitting. So that's part of a good chunk of that number.
Okay, so it's not that the provincial and federal governments are suddenly feeling generous, which is unfortunate.
No.
Just a comment, I see that the principal and interest on long-term debt is going up 10.8%. That's almost 11%. I don't think that's sustainable year over year. That's just my one comment. And another specific question I had was it's on 1.6 of our package, but it talks about stormwater management and municipal drains. And I got a question on stormwater management and municipal drains. Stormwater management, I know staff were looking at a stormwater management fee, and I just wondered, will we be seeing that? I don't think we're seeing that in 2026. Is that something that we might see in 2027?
So through your worship to Councillor Miller, so we are, as part of the stormwater master plan, we are revitalizing that. So that process to get the funding model. So it won't necessarily be a fee, there will be options assessed. And the public engagement and communications for that will occur, in the coming months. We're just working on the communications plan right now. But yes, that is occurring this year and into next year.
Okay. When you go out to the public, don't go out right after a large budget increase, because we got a lot of negative comments on that one due to, I think a lot of it came because of timing. Municipal drains, it shows, a budget of, it's gone down a bit, 908,000. What is that budget for? Is that for the actual works? Is that for Shannon's position? Is that for this part of the studies? What, do we know what's that 908,000 get us?
So through your worship, again to Councillor Miller, that is the operation and maintenance of our stormwater utility and municipal drains. So as an example, you know, when we camera our pipes and clean them, that includes that maintenance, whether we, you know, need to replace a broken underground stormwater pipe. And the main change I would highlight in 2026 is because of bringing the drainage superintendent in-house, who is Shannon, that's that reduction. That's the main driver, because it's a cost savings to the county.
Okay, I thought it would have been more given how much work we've been doing on municipal drains, but I guess it comes down to when the actual work's done. But at the same time, we learned the railroads weren't paying their apportioned costs. That has been overturned. They have to pay it. Will that have any impact on revenues or on us, or doesn't impact at all?
Through your worship, I can't answer that. I'm aware of the court case that you're referencing, but I don't know off the top of my head whether we have municipal drains that are impacted by CN Rail or any of the rail networks in the county, but it's certainly something we can follow up with.
Yeah, okay, so we are not gonna see $12 million come in from CN or anything like that. So, okay, that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Councillor Kyle and then Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff. So on page 1.3, the question that I had, under rent and financial expenses, there's an 80.7% increase. So, and it's a relatively big number, over 1.2 million. So just wondering what explains that big jump.
And just 1 minute, finance team is looking up that answer, so I don't know if we want to wait or move on while they're looking at that. Oh, wait, maybe they know. Okay, yep, they would like to answer that after I go through my quick little presentation.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've asked the Heathers a few questions. I think one of them is going to get answered in a minute. If you're going to go through your slides, Heather, or do you want me to ask the question now and you can point to the slides?
Yeah, I think my slides might start as kind of a kickoff for
Yeah,
questions to be asked.
So
They do have an answer about the rent. A large portion of that is the paramedics headquarters.
Okay, so maybe because Allison is finished, I'm finished, the questions are going to start. We're going to take a 10-minute break and come back. Evan, are we back? Okay, thank you. So we're back, and Councillor Bell, you were going to ask a question. Heather's going to take any questions now.
Yeah, I have a few questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
And Heather knows them all, so she's well prepared. I put on photographs of some of the pages from our report. A couple of things caught the attention of residents, people I actually know reasonably well, and in whom I have some confidence they're asking a reasonable question. So the first one was really around staff. And on our summary, we show that our expenditures on staff wages and benefits is increasing by 7.9% this year. And it's a really quite sensitive number because a lot of people that complain about taxes going up will refer to the fact that they're actually on fixed income. So they see on the one hand what appears like county staff are getting a 7.9% increase and they're on a fixed income. How can they afford the resultant property taxes? So there is an answer, and it's a multi-part answer, and I hope Heather can answer it now for the benefit of everybody, and I will then send that same response back to the people that wrote to me. So that's my first question. I'll come back with another if I may.
Through the mayor, so the question that came specifically was about why in the expenditures line, the increase was much higher than it is as a budget driver. So what we went through is largely it's because all the paramedic services, wage increases, and that is all count as an expenditure, but it has offsetting revenue and things, so that's why it's not the same driver. So it's largely an increase in expenditures, but in the drivers it plays out. So we went through, we figured out the difference between the salaries and wages and benefits line in the summary and the budget drivers line. Most of it is because of the paramedic services wage increase, the paramedics grant programs increase. I think Heather Mifflin already explained that this is the first year we've completely brought in the community paramedicine part of the budget. It's fully funded by the province, but we've brought it into our budget process just for transparency and so that it's all on the table when we look at our full summary. So there are a few other departments, building department, some of the programs, staff, where there's increases in staff that are caught in the increase in salaries, wages, and benefits, but they also have an offsetting user fee or rate increase, so it doesn't create a budget driver. So that's why it looks like there's more staff. Some of that's staff hours, some of that's annualization from last year's approved staff. All those things contribute to why it's an increase in the expenses, but not the same increase in the budget drivers.
Yeah, I think that's thank you, Heather, that's very helpful. I think a general question, are we going to put a Q&A section on our website that will answer these questions so that everybody can see the same answer that we get? I think it'd be really helpful.
Yep, we will be posting, some of these answers are going to be posted on EngageRant today, and the slides themselves will be posted this afternoon.
Okay, that's very helpful. The second question was on same people writing to me about efficiencies. How can we demonstrate that we are an efficient organisation? And I was thinking of a couple of KPIs that might be helpful. How much do we spend per kilometre, lane kilometre of road, or how much do we spend on garbage collection per capita compared to comparable municipalities? And I think we need to be able to relate back to our neighbouring municipalities and say, we're doing as well as them or we're doing better. And if we're not doing better, this is an area where we're actually going to be working in the next years to make ourselves better.
So through the mayor, we have just in the last week or so received the BMA does a KPI kind of review of the municipalities. We haven't really had time to fully digest that yet, but my concern with that always is that, I mean, some metrics were going to look better than other metrics. So I would suggest that if there's specific metrics council would like us to report back on, we're happy to do so. You know, otherwise there's a whole lot of.
Well, I'm not going to try and do staff's work, but I think there's an open question there. You know, we are showing that we're increasing expenditures by 8%, more or less. how do we demonstrate that we're efficient? And I don't know all the answers, but I think it's an open question. If we see inflation as 3% and suddenly we're increasing expenditures by 8%, what's happening? How can we demonstrate and make our residents feel like we've got it under control? I believe we've got it under control, don't get me wrong, but I think how can you demonstrate to people that are not as intimately involved in the operation of our county and make them feel confident? And you don't have to answer that today. I mean, you've got 3 weeks to answer that.
We could look through the KPIs. I mean, I don't know that we're going to convince, that there's any metric that's going to convince people that we are an efficient organization. I think, you know, people largely have a concern about governments in general, but aside from going through and trying to explain every single dollar, I could look at the comparators, but I don't know that that's going to tell the whole story that we're hoping.
Yeah, I'm saying this in my own experience of preparing budgets in private industry is I got this challenge every year. And so it is something that we need to be able to stand comfortably behind our responses on. And I'm not suggesting that you give me a response today, but in 3 weeks' time when we come back again, it would be helpful if you got some indicators. Third question, and I know the answer to this one already. In the documents we've got, we're showing that the funding request increase from GEPH is 9.2%. And as Heather Mifflin pointed out to me, the number that we used last year was the same number that we used in 2024. We didn't show any increase last year. There was, in fact, an increase. Somehow finance managed that. But the real increase year on year is not 9.2%, it's only 5.1%. And I just wanted to correct the record on that so that people don't think the public health unit is running out of financial control. Final comment, it really comes back to something I mentioned earlier, and that's comparables with other municipalities. I think partly it's to do with, again, demonstrating that we've got it under control. Partly it's to be able to promote ourselves to the outside world that we're a thoughtful, cost-conscious, attractive place to come and do business. So we're putting our property tax up at a level that's no higher than local municipalities. I've got two in mind. Norfolk came out with 5.5%, excluding a 1% special levy. The city came out with 4.2%, or that was Mayor Davis's Strong Mayor's Power budget, which was actually reduced from what the city council had actually previously agreed. Again, not including a 1% budget. So I think when you look at those comparables, you know, we're in relatively good shape. But I think as we tell the story at the end of this whole exercise, it is important that we show to people that we're, you know, we've got control over this and we're not out of whack. Interesting, Norfolk County just increased all their rates for water and wastewater by 10%. So just to compound their own little problem, and we have not done that. And I think we have a good story to tell, and we should tell it.
Jennifer and then Lucas.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just to further comment on Councillor Bell's comments, I think what I'm hearing is the storytelling piece. It's the communications of it. So we know it's really a complex budget process, how we arrive at the numbers, all of those things. But I think one of the things I did appreciate, there's an infographic in here that really talks about, what is the balanced budget? It has to be balanced, that type of thing. Maybe we need more of those to explain other parts of the budget, maybe the staffing piece being one of them, that really kind of breaks it down for people, who these people are and what they're doing in order to paint that picture, as Councillor Bell says, that shows that efficiency and that leanness and that we really are operating at a very high level on a very well-crafted budget that is doing exactly what it needs to do without going over and above.
Councillor Oakley?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to comment on two things that have come out of this discussion so far, just in terms of Councillor Bell's comment in regards to how we're comparing on the percent increase rate. I think that's relevant and true. I think it's also relevant, the comparison that we did back with the long-term financial plan, which is, you know, it's also relevant what that percent increase is starting off of the base budget, of which compared to our comparators, we are starting from a very low budget. So compared to our peers. So that 5.5% increase, or you know, our 5% increase would be lower than, you know, Norfolk's 5.5% increase because we're starting at a lower rate as well. So I think that's a relevant piece to communicate. And then further to Councillor Kyle's point, I think we're in a bit of a darned if we do, darned if we don't situation with simplifying our communications. On one hand, I think we do need to do, we're doing lots of like the pieces that Councillor Kyle is highlighting, the infographics, fantastic. I love the stuff that we produce each year in terms of those infographics and simplifying and communicating those pieces of information. But also at the same time, if we do too much of the simplification, I think, you know, we have been in the past accused of, you know, hiding some of our information. And, you know, there will always be people who, and I don't think it's deliberate or intentional, will pick out numbers like that 8% and say this is the whole story without considering the larger picture. It's just the nature of us being transparent in our processes, and I think, you know, we do a great job at being transparent, even though it's a large document that's hard to digest. So those are sort of my comments there.
Councillor Bell? Oh, Councillor Bell, and then Councillor Chambers.
No, no, you haven't.
Go ahead.
I have some questions that pertain to property acquisition matters that would necessarily have to be in camera. And I'm just wondering, process, if we have a council meeting in between this meeting and the next step of the budget process, could I ask that at our next council meeting, an in-camera session be scheduled so that I can ask some questions on property acquisition matters as it relates to the budget, and then we can have those resolved.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I just have one more question.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether this may have to be delayed. And that's with regard to the capital project regarding Apps Mill capital repairs. Is that something that can be discussed openly, or should it be in camera?
Through the chair, so those budget items are basically a placeholder for now. We're still working with the Conservation Authority and the city on how to deal with Apps Mill, and so I didn't want us to miss that, because if the opportunity did materialize, that I would have budget there. So they're placeholders for now. If things happen, I'll be coming to council as soon as I can get the information to you. We're still waiting on some things to be resolved, and then from there, you know, if things go forward, which I'm hopeful they will, that we'll be utilizing those budget lines quite quickly once we get the green light from council.
And that's a discussion that perhaps can be elaborated upon at the in-camera session, and you understand where I'm going with that.
It's easier to put it on the in-camera agenda, and then if we don't need it, we'll just not use it or won't speak to it. It's better to put it on so that we can not get ourselves in any trouble. Councillor Chambers.
That, along with, I'll talk with the clerk about what I want on.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank staff again for bringing forward a 3-year forecast. Even if it worries me that the numbers in it are actually reflective of a continuing trend of somewhere between 5% and 6% property tax increase over the next few years. it's not necessarily this council's problem because there'll be a new council in later in the year. But I do think it illustrates further the fact that we are a very large and growing community. Our expenditures are going to increase by 27% over the next 4 years. Our net levy, which is the driver ultimately for property tax increases, is 35%. I mean, these are big numbers. Hidden in there, I think, is the benefit of all the industrial development that we're seeing coming to play into our tax assessment. So my question is it possible for staff to show how the property tax base and the assessment changes over those 4 years of the forecast? I'm pretty confident we're going to see a growing contribution from our industrial sector, but it would be helpful to see that. And then in the absence in this council of a strategic plan update, it ought to guide the very first steps in the next council when we think about a strategic plan for the next council term.
Yeah. So in terms of when we did the long-term financial plan, the assumptions from Watson's were based on, basically a steady growth over the next 4 years. So part of the story that we'll be testing for this next long-term financial plan will be, again, are we seeing a much bigger increase possibly in our ICI component? Is that test holding true, or are the numbers truly, consistently down? And this being the first year that we've asked for any kind of forecasting and, looking at those growth numbers, both pieces, they'll just be tested again through the long-term plan.
Questions? None? Okay, we can move on then.
Sorry, through the mayor, I did have a couple other question slides that I was gonna present if we have.
That'd be great.
So some of the questions we've already discussed today. Why do property taxes not go down with decreasing property values? I think we spoke about that a fair bit in terms of assessment. Why does the County of Brant feel a 5% increase is justified? So I've outlined here just, this is status quo budget with no new staff enhancements or significant changes. We do always continue with the budget pressures, especially as a growing municipality, and changing expectations and legislation. So we have to invest more in our asset management. And we did this year, council, chose to support a few major funding requests and a few, community groups that were looking for some money, and the new hospital contribution. So the county services, the property tax increase that's actually attributed to the core county services, the stuff we do every day, is about 2.7%. So that's we haven't increased exponentially like what we're providing. There was a question about paid holidays and statutory holidays on Engage Brant. So for council's information, we looked at it, and usually a paid holiday costs the county about $42,000, which is the overtime and standby costs for staff that do work that day, because obviously paramedics continue, some of our rec programs continue, operations needs to be on standby if something happens. Currently, we recognize 12 statutory paid holidays and 2 half-days. Those are reflected in our union contracts, so it's not something that council can just decide not to do for a year, which was the suggestion on Engage Brant. Councillor Bell's question, we went through the difference between the budget summary and the budget drivers. Councillor Bell also requested a property tax breakdown by property type, so that is provided in your presentation. I think the good news story of this is that our ICI and our commercial and industrial are gaining in terms of how much they're contributing towards the tax base. So over the last few years, we've seen increases in how much, well, specifically the industrial, it's definitely seen a bunch of increases this year. The other question we did have asked was breaking, I think Councillor Bell alluded to this earlier, was breaking down our expenses to what part actually gets funded by the tax base and what part gets funded through assessment growth. So as he said, our overall operating expenses are just about 165 million. 92.5 million of that is funded from the tax levy, approximately 7 million of which represents an increase over last year's tax levy, and 2.6 of that is actually funded through the assessment growth that we saw in 2025. Okay, so the other question that came up earlier today and at the December 18th meeting, so just a reminder, on December 18th, we passed a resolution that said that staff be directed to investigate the missing budget direction from the Shared Social Services Committee, and that this be referred to the Liaison Committee if required. So I did go back through the city's staff reports, meeting minutes, watched their YouTube videos. So when they did present to the Estimates Committee, they did have, their recommendation was the 6.49% increase with the capital and operating budgets. And they had left it that council could add in those two enhancements if they wanted to. That's just how the city does their budgeting. So the recommendation, that's how the recommendation was framed. Anybody who's watched the meeting, there wasn't a great deal of discussion of it. They just moved it as written, which did not have the enhancements included in it. So the Estimates Committee and City Council both supported the budget as it was without the enhancements. So that's how their base budget was approved. Now, under the Shared Services Agreement, when our council looked at it in October, we have the opportunity to either support their budget or outline our concerns with it. We supported the budget with the enhancements, but the city as a service provider, they have to take our comments into consideration, but they don't have to do what we have recommended. So it is their prerogative they could have increased the budget, they could have changed the budget, but if we're not satisfied, our option is to go to the Liaison Committee, but we would need to send that direction prior to January 27th. So if that's something that this council wants to look at, we will need to do that probably today. Just one comment that because the strong mayor power legislation wasn't contemplated at the time he wrote this social services agreement, I can't even conjecture how that plays into our ability to take this to the Liaison Committee or the Liaisons Committee ability to change Mayor Davis's budget. So that's just an extra context. I don't know if that changes council's direction on this.
Yeah, I watched the City Council last night go through the same process we're going through today. Mayor Davis took out the 3.03%, then he added some back. So I'm not quite sure exactly where we've ended up, and it probably needs your staff, Heather, to go and root through the numbers in a little bit more detail. So he put
I was
things
not
in,
aware of that last
he put
night.
things in, then he took them out, and then he put things back in again. So it's a bit like a yo-yo. There is an answer, but it's not the one that we wanted. It's not the one that the City Council agreed. It's somewhere in the middle. So I think the net effect, if I understand correctly, we will be adding in, if Kevin Davis's budget is approved, we'll be then adding in a couple of positions. And I think it amounts to about $120,000, something like that. But I'll leave that to staff to work through.
Councillor Oakley?
Yeah, through you, Ms. Mayor. Further to this particular topic, I mean, I would feel pretty strongly about us going to the Liaison Committee over this. You know, my understanding of this, you know, paramedics, various things like that, that what gets decided at those shared committees should be honored in our budget processes. You know, in theory here, I think we could probably go ahead and say that we're gonna make the changes to our paramedics budget that us from the county side wanted to see and the city did not, but we honor the processes decided by those shared committees. So I think we should go to the liaison committee over this, because in my mind, the decision was made in social services. It'd be inappropriate for either council to not follow through at that point. Regardless of strong mayor power legislation, understanding, of course, that it's largely relying on convention and not legislation. But my other question would be in regards to, hold on, where do I have it here? In regards to the question on why this county grant field, the 5% increase is justified, and the excerpt here with no new staff enhancements, do we have baked into our long-term financial plan staff enhancements when we do need to see them due to growth and inflationary pressure, so on?
Some of the directions when we put the forecasting for was for people to add in growth-related positions, not a whole new service, but if just by the number of, the amount we're spending, the number of people, we needed a couple positions in those. We've asked them to put those in the operating forecast, so they will be going through the long-term financial plan for those years in advance.
Thank you. And then my other last question would be, do we need to put a motion on the floor now in regards to going to the liaison committee?
I believe that if this council wants staff to send that letter to the city requesting that this go to liaison, we should be doing that today so that we can get it to them in advance of that deadline.
Councillor Miller?
I'm just thinking, we had the paramedic budget, you know, there was a lot of back and forth between the city and the county, but if I'm looking at what the city did with social services, technically then we wouldn't even need their approval to change. Like we could have added in another ambulance today. Is that how that works?
Yes, we
Was
could
it
have.
supposed to work that way?
Yep, that's how the agreement's written.
Wow.
Is that the decision's made by the service provider, the other contributor has the option to appeal it to the liaison committee.
So we could say, well, you know, we kind of do need that extra half ambulance, so let's add it, let's make an amendment, let's add, okay. I mean, that's how it's playing out, and I'm not sure if that's the best way. I think I think it would be good, I think, if both councils respected what these, and at the end of the day, advisory councils have come up with, because at those meetings, you can sit around, you can at least discuss it, you can debate it and have a thorough discussion, but then it gets into the respective municipalities' budget, and then they just take it over. So it seems like an odd process, so, okay, just making it clear for myself if nobody else. Thank you.
No, I saw clarity there too. We agreed, tried to bring that motion forward too. Councillor Oakley, you're first.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to move then that we refer the social services budget and the paramedics budget to the liaison committee.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Bell, it's on the floor for discussion. Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Pierce.
Yes, I don't support the motion because that's not the liaison committee is a committee that is established through the cost-sharing agreement with specific mandates. It's not a committee to go talk about things unless there's a dispute. And I think the discussion can occur at the various committees, not necessarily the liaison committee, because the liaison committee is specifically for dispute resolution. And I'm not sure we're in a dispute. And if the strong mayor powers gives the veto power, then the dispute is solved by that rather than the liaison committee. In other words, I think the liaison committee, as it is structured through the cost-sharing agreement, is now redundant.
Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm split on this one in the sense that, you know, I would support potentially sending the social services decision, but not the paramedics decision, because it was, to Councillor Chambers' point, the committees are to decide, in essence, what happens with that specific service. There was discussions on the additional ambulance. I was in support of the additional ambulance. We discussed it at length. the decision was made and approved at that board that we would not. It went to the county, then it went to the city for approval of the budget. They approved it, so in essence, they're agreeing with what was done on there. So I would put paramedic services aside, even though I still believe we should have another ambulance. That's a moot point in this one here. The social services one, I look at that as different. I look at that as there was decisions made and conversations had at that meeting, and our suggestion as part of that overall, I wasn't at the meeting, but from what I've heard and the conversations we've had, was more or less pushed aside. It wasn't even contemplated in the final decision. So that one there, I would suggest, is more of a dispute as to that particular budget. So I would be in favor of sending that one, but not the other.
Okay, Councillor Oakley?
Through Mr. Mayor, first I would like to clarify to the clerks that I'd like to break that down into two clauses and we can deal with them separately. And then to explain why I would like to include paramedic services with it. Right now, our agreement with the city on both of these committees works on the convention that what gets approved at those committees goes forward. And provided that the convention is followed, I too am willing to allow the paramedics to go forward as is because it was agreed upon at that committee. However, if the decision made at the liaison committee is that the convention is broken and the city is going to approve the social services without considering or without honoring what was decided at the shared social services committee, I'm not willing then to let paramedics go when we, from the county perspective, all acknowledge that the extra ambulance needs to be there. And thus, if convention's broken, then I wouldn't be willing to give up that ambulance and just approve it as part of our own budget process.
Okay, so what we're going to do, oh, Heather?
Sorry, can I just clarify though? This council has already given final approval to the paramedic services budget. We did so at the end of November, as per the agreement. So we've already given our final approval to paramedics as it stands. That's why our only opportunity under the agreement is to appeal the social services, what their final decision was.
Through Ms. Mayor, then I'll retract the clause in regards to paramedics begrudgingly.
Councillor Bell, you're okay with that? Good. So this is just have it, social services go forward as a dispute. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, off it goes. Any other questions? Heather, do you want to keep going? You have. That's
Sorry,
it?
that's it for my presentation. This is just for any other opportunities for question and discussion at the council table.
Okay, so questions, finance. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff again. Again, I want to thank you for all the time that you've put into this. Unfortunately, I will not be here on the February 5th meeting, but I am completely in support of what is written here, and we'll see if my colleagues have any additional changes to it at that point in time, but I'm in support of what's here, so I would have nothing to add for the February 5th meeting. And again, our thanks.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. Now, that's just for finance. Do you want to go through the whole list, or is it the questions now just for finance?
I think it's just open to questions. There's one more staff report and then next steps after we get through the question period.
So let's do the next staff report. And then we'll have more questions. Number 8 on the agenda.
Yeah, this is just the standard staff report that finance is required to present to council before the budget's approved. It's just outlining our included and excluded expenses if there's any questions.
I have a motion on the floor. Need any seconder? Councillor Kyle. Any discussion on number 8? Got a lunch date, Councillor Coleman? And no other questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And next steps, please, Heather.
Okay, so the next step, between now and February 2nd, members of council, we are suggesting that if there are amendments that you plan on bringing forward on the 5th, if you could, please forward them to finance staff so we can do the work to map out the costs and the implications of those. Heather Bailey will be sending out tomorrow a form that might help you if you're contemplating any changes. Obviously, we can't tell council they can't have to do it ahead of time, but we are asking that if you do it ahead of time, we can do the work behind the scenes to be prepared for the 5th. February 5th is our special meeting to consider any of those proposed amendments. Once again, under the act, those are amendments brought forward by council, so the amendments have to be sponsored by a member of council. It's not just random questions that come in that we need to vote on. And then, presuming we get through the 5th and the mayor's satisfied with the budget as it stands with any amendments, the budget will be amended, as amended, deemed approved 30 days from when it was delivered to council, which was January 16th. So February 15th, we will have a budget in place. As I said, the request template is being forwarded. Just a reminder, because it is confusing, there is no requirement for a final council vote on the proposed budget. The budget as it stands after any amendments have been made will be in effect unless the mayor vetoes one of the amendments. That's it for me.
Any questions for Heather? Vote. Please be, Councillor Kyle?
Yeah, just one quick one, Heather. Through the mayor to you, if presumably no one from council were to make any proposed amendments, does that speed up that process then? Or does it still follow the 5th we'd meet and then the 15th and so on?
The timelines would stay. There is a process where council could shorten the timelines, but I think for the sake of a week, we're probably just carry on with the 15th for implementation.
Any other questions? Thank you, Heather. Okay, that's it then. Thank you for your support around the table. I was glad to see it. I didn't know how it was going to be received, but I'm very grateful that you saw it the way I saw it. With that being said, I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Pierce, and we're going to meet again as a full council on February the 5th at 9 o'clock. All those in favor of adjournment? Thank you. Enjoy your lunch, Councillor Coleman.